I'll talk about the courage of Ibn Taymiyyah. May Allah have mercy on him and may Allah sanctify his soul. However, I will address it from a little bit of a different perspective. So Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala was a major Hanbali scholar of the 7th and 8th century of Hijrah. He was born in 661 after Hijrah and died in 728. And if you're not familiar with the Hijri calendar, you want to familiarize yourself with the Hijri calendar because it's very hard to understand Islamic history or to relate to Islamic history without the Hijri calendar. So when we say 661 after Hijrah to 728 after Hijrah, that corresponds to 1263 AD to 1328 AD. So when he died, there was exactly 600 years of difference between the Hijri calendar and the Gregorian calendar. So he died 728 AH, and that was 1328 AD. It is important that you basically contextualize his life within that sort of trajectory of Islamic history, because he was born about 5 years after the fall of Baghdad. He was born about 5 years after the fall of Baghdad at the hands of the Tatars or Mongols. Certainly the Tatars are our brothers now. It's just like when we talk about Quraysh. You know, we don't have any animosity towards Quraysh now, but at some point Quraysh was not doing good things. So sometimes we mention Quraysh in a negative light, but certainly Qurayshis now, they enjoy like a privileged status among us Muslims. Although man qassara bihi amaluhu lam yusra bihi nasabuh, if you fall short because of your deeds, your lineage will not help you catch up. But I just wanted to say that when we say Tatars or we say Mongols and Mongol invasion and we talk about the Tatars in a negative way, that does not mean we have any hard feelings toward our Muslim brothers and sisters who come from this lineage, just as much as we don't have any hard feelings towards Qurayshis, whose grandfathers may have been Utbah and Shayba and Abu Jahl himself. So this needs to be kept in mind. But he certainly was born in a tumultuous, turbulent time, and he left his hometown when he was about 5-6 years of age. He fled his hometown because of a Tatari invasion. The Mongols were going to invade his hometown, and he left for Damascus, where he grew up, and he spent the rest of his life, except when he was on different expeditions for different reasons. He lived in Damascus, so he is Shami to a great extent. For those of you who are not familiar with his stature, the greatest imams and his caliber when it comes to his scholarly credits and scholarly achievements, the greatest imams of his time had some very flattering things to say about him. Many such things that we can quote, but we will mention just a few of them because this is not the main sort of theme of our discussion today. You have things in the sort of magnitude of the like of him has not been seen for the last 400 years. That's big, right? So when you're talking about someone who was born in 661, and you have someone who became his adversary, by the way. This is Ibn Zamlakani rahimahullah, or Zamlakani rahimahullah ta'ala, one of the greatest scholars of his time. Before he became his adversary, and even after he became his adversary, he had very flattering things to say about him, about his caliber as a scholar. He disagreed with him over some issues, and that is, and I started by Ibn Zamlakani because it is important to also put these things in context. We don't consider Imam Ibn Taymiyyah to be infallible because we don't consider Imam Ahmad or Imam Abu Hanifa or Malik or Shafi'i to be infallible. There is only one infallible person among this ummah, which is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. After that, everybody else يؤخذ من قوله ويرد. So you take from them and you leave, because nobody is infallible except the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. This scholar, who became later his adversary, said nobody has seen anything like this for the last 400 years. So we're talking about from the 3rd century after Hijrah to his time. And this was actually repeated by several scholars. Several scholars said the same statement about Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. You will have someone like Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, who was one of the greatest scholars of his time, like a verifying scholar of the Maliki and Shafi'i madhabs. Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, his imama is known. He said, I have seen a man who had all the knowledge between his eyes. He takes whatever he wishes and leaves whatever he wishes. So he had all the knowledge between his eyes. So his ability to quote, to cite, to remember, and basically to analyze the text of Revelation and to use the text of Revelation was unparalleled by the great scholars of his time. And he was basically born at a time where we had a huge Islamic renaissance and great scholars from all the mazahib and all the different creedal orientations. When you have someone like Ibn Daqiq al-Eid as well, Imam Ibn Daqiq al-Eid say to him, to Imam Taymiyyah, by the way, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid was 20 plus years his senior, about 30 years his senior. So he said to him one day, I did not think that Allah is still creating people like you. I did not think that Allah is still creating people like you. And you have, similar statements from scholars like Al-Hafiz al-Mizzi, like Al-Zahabi, and many others, including some of his adversaries like Abu Hayyan al-Andalusi, and some of his opponents. And they also had great things to say about his scholarly caliber. This is important to put it in context, because when we talk about heroism and we talk about courage, it's not any courage. It's not any recklessness. It is courage that is basically guided. It is courage. It is guided courage. It is courage that is balanced, and that is extremely important. But when you hear things about this, when you hear things like this, when you hear statements like this about his scholarly caliber and the fact that he reached the pinnacle of knowledge in the transmitted and rational sciences, which was another advantage of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, is that he combined in a way that is very distinct between the transmitted and the rational sciences, and people have acknowledged that he had reached the pinnacle of knowledge in both the transmitted, revealed sciences of the Quran and the Sunnah, and all the transmitted and traditional sciences, and the rational sciences as well. So, considering, the fact that he reached that pinnacle, you may be sort of imagining, or you may be picturing someone who was completely secluded from life, someone who was isolated in his office or, study room, and just spending his life and learning and preaching and learning and teaching. Not even preaching, but just learning and teaching. But that is absolutely not the case. And I will read a statement here by Al-Allama Abu al-Hasan al-Nadwi, rahimahullah ta'ala, when he described Imam Ibn Taymiyyah. Al-Allama Abu al-Hasan al-Nadwi, I think that most of you should be familiar with him. He said in his description of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, he was an erudite scholar, activist, mujahid, and devout worshipper, a combination that rarely existed outside the earlier generations. A combination that rarely existed outside the earlier generations. There are scholars, and I don't claim to be an activist scholar, but there are scholars who are basically dedicated to learning and teaching. And we're thankful for their presence. We're grateful. We should not belittle their contribution. But to be an activist also, to be out with the people, trying to reform the conditions, social conditions, economic conditions, political conditions of the people, and to immerse yourself within the people and help them out, and basically take them by the hand and guide them, and support them and counsel them, is not that common. Is not that common. And to participate, to motivate people to perform jihad is not that common. But to participate, it's even rarer. But he was all of this. So he motivated, he participated. Whenever he motivated people to do something, he was the first to do it. So when he motivated the people to go out and confront the Mongols in Shakhab, or to go out and on the different expeditions, he was the first one to do this. So I will talk a little bit about some of that history. So today I will focus on a singular aspect of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah's character. That is his courage, because that is what I was asked to talk about. Al-Allama Mahmoud Shukri al-Alusi, rahimahullah ta'ala, quotes Siraj al-Din Abu Hafs al-Bazzar, that's Umar al-Bazzar, rahimahullah ta'ala. He quotes this from al-Bazzar, rahimahullah ta'ala. Al-Bazzar said about the courage of Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he said, he was one of the bravest, most steadfast of heart. I have never seen anyone more composed or more formidable in battling enemies. He waged jihad in the way of Allah with his heart, tongue, and hand, fearing no criticism or blame in the path of God. Then he keeps on talking about his courage, and he says, I will skip, and then he says, mounted on horseback. So he was a horseman, so he was very skilled in the arts of war as well. So mounted on horseback, he would charge into the enemy ranks like the bravest of warriors, standing firm like the most steadfast of knights. So if you imagine like a scholar who reached the pinnacle of knowledge, being among the sort of the most formidable knights, that's quite the image. Striking fear into the enemy with his fierce attacks, plunging into them like a man unafraid of death. They say that in the conquest of Acre, he displayed such acts of valor that defy description. Indeed, his actions, counsel, and astute judgment were instrumental in the Muslims' successful capture of the city. So, many things to be said in this regard. But then let's talk about this courage. Could this courage be misguided? Could courage be misguided? Oh, absolutely. I want you to always contextualize things from an Islamic perspective. This is how you can contextualize any human act or behavior. There are two conditions for a human act or behavior: to be wholesome, to be holy, to be godly, to be righteous. That is al-ikhlas wal-mutaba'a. That is sincerity and correctness. Sincerity and correctness, devotion to Allah. It should be for the sake of Allah, and it should be correct. It should be guided. How do you know if it is guided or not guided? Through the Quran and the Sunnah, the teachings of Islam. The problem of many of us nowadays is that we have detailed knowledge of that we hate, and basically brief knowledge of that which we like. We have detailed knowledge of the philosophies that we dislike, and very brief knowledge of the Islam that we like. It is expected, because if you go to school for 12 years and then you go to college for 4 years and then you get your exposure to Islam once a week on Sunday, how do you think that you're balanced? How do you think that you have enough exposure to that which you subscribe to, that which you identify with, which is your religion, Islam? Your exposure to other thoughts and philosophies have been 300 times more than your exposure to Islam. Then that creates this imbalance. It is not limited to the masses. It's not limited to the public. It is also among the dua. Many of the dua, whether they are true dua or not, whether they are sincere or not, that is not the issue, but they have detailed knowledge of that which they attack, and not enough knowledge of what that which they espouse or defend. Okay, so that courage has to be, we have to ask two questions. Is it for Allah, and is it moderate, correct, right, guided, the right type of courage? Because in the Nicomachean ethics, and that also in our ethics, our moral system, our ethical system, and to be honest also, that's the Nicomachean Aristotelian ethics, so that's the Nicomachean model. Moral virtues are a mean or balance between two extremes, between two vices. So every virtue is flanked by two vices. So what is courage flanked by? Cowardice and recklessness. Cowardice and recklessness. How do we know that this is the right courage? By, knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah, knowledge of the example of the first generation. Most importantly, the example of our Prophet and Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the only infallible person in our history, and those who are closest to him, and those who are closest, and those who are closest. But I will not basically delve into this discussion of correctness and when courage is correct and when courage is not correct, but I will just quote one dalil or one evidence on the importance of the correctness of courage. When the Israelite man who was picking up fights every day with the Egyptians, my ancestors, so when that Israelite man who was picking up fights every day with the Egyptians called for help, or asked Musa for help, or called upon Musa for help. The first day, Musa helped him out. The second day, Musa said to him what? إِنَّكَ لَغَوِيٌّ مُبِينٌ. You are a clear misleader, deviator, misguided, deviant. Yeah, because that is not courage. You're basically reckless. Yes, you have been subjected, and the rest of the Israelites have been subjected to great injustices. But the response is not by picking up street fights every day with different people. That is not the response. There should be another response. Yes, you should resist the oppression, but that is not the right way to resist the oppression. Therefore, you are clearly misguided. So it is important that courage is not misplaced. That courage is not misplaced, and it will often be misplaced if it is not sincere. So because correctness and sincerity, they are not actually separated from each other. There is a symbiotic relationship between correctness and sincerity. If you're truly sincere, you will be keen on being correct. You will be keen on being correct. Like if you truly love your mom and you want to buy her a gift, you will truly try to figure out which gift she will like the most. But if you're not that sincere and you just want to buy her a gift, you don't want to waste your time. You just, you don't even go to any store. You just order something online, wrap it, give it to her. Okay, we're done. I gave you a gift. No, but if you're really sincere and if you really love your mom, then you'll ask your sister, which gift would she like the most, or what she needs the most, or something like that. So you want to try to get the best gift. So if you're truly sincere and devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you want to know what is most pleasing to Allah. Not only what is correct, but what is better. What is better for me? What is more pleasing for, to Allah at this time, in this place, in this circumstance? And you would be concerned about this. You would be concerned about this. So anyway, sincerity is important, and that's what we want to focus on in the last 9 minutes and 55 seconds that we have. So sincerity is important. And how do you know that something is actually sincere? There is no way that you can be certain of someone's sincerity unless you're told by revelation. So we know that Abu Bakr was sincere, yes. We know Umar was sincere, yes. Uthman, Ali, radiallahu anhum, al-Ashara. Bilal was sincere. Ammar was sincere. Abdullah ibn Salam was sincere. We were told that these people were being Jannah. That's it. It's done for them. These people were sincere. They were devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they were sincere. But short of this, it will be hard to be certain of someone's sincerity, but you can be very confident. You can, not certain, but very confident that, everything they're doing points to their sincerity. And there are certain features, there are certain characteristics and certain qualities that will point to someone's sincerity, and that someone's courage was actually sincere and for the sake of Allah. One of them is consistency. Certainly sacrifice. But keep in mind, sacrifice is not a litmus paper test. Not a litmus paper test. Do you remember the hadith of the three people, the hadith of Abu Huraira, of the first 3 people with which the fire will be kindled? Who are the first 3 people with which the fire will be kindled? This is what Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu told us from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A martyr, a philanthropist, and a scholar. So the martyr fought, that's the ultimate sacrifice, by the way, but he fought to be called courageous. And the philanthropist gave charity to be called generous. And the scholar learned and taught to be called knowledgeable. So you could still sacrifice. People actually are hungry for recognition, that they want to go down in history as such or such. Go down in history. You're not going to be there to basically celebrate your recognition by the people. But people are this hungry for recognition. People are hungry for people's acceptance and people's recognition, hungry for popularity, hungry for fame, hungry for this and that they would actually die to be mentioned or to be praised after their death. Or they want to go down in history. If you're a monarch or a royal or something, you want to go down in history as such and such. And you're not going to be there, basically, to celebrate that good mention or that recognition. So sincerity sacrifice is not a litmus paper test. It is an important one, because many people are courageous as long as it doesn't touch them. So it is important one that you want to show that you can actually sacrifice for your values, sacrifice for that which you espouse and that which you are preaching. But it is not enough. There is consistency and resilience as well. Consistency and resilience. And consistency is across the board. Consistency is not limited to the very act that, it's not that you're consistently courageous. But if this courage is for Allah, shouldn't you also be consistently generous? Shouldn't you also be consistently cautious? Shouldn't you also be consistently kind to your parents? If this is truly for Allah, shouldn't it be like across the board? When the Prophet ﷺ said to the Sahaba, radwanullahi alayhim, which one of you woke up fasting today? And Abu Bakr said, I. And then he said, which one of you visited a sick person today? And Abu Bakr said, I. Which one of you followed the janazah today? Abu Bakr said, I. And which one of you at'am miskinan today, or fed a hungry person today? And Abu Bakr said, I. That is being consistent. There is no particular act of worship that you're inclined to. Whatever is more pleasing to your Lord, you don't have a specialty type worship or or you're not a specialty worshiper. Wherever your Lord wants you to be, you will be there. Wherever your Lord wants you to be, you will be there. So you will be generous, you will be courageous, you will be kind to your parents. Someone who is basically studious and a knowledge seeker, a talib ilm that is taking knowledge very, very, very seriously, and thinks that when his, if he has ill parents or elderly parents, and to think that if you sit down and massage their legs, that is wasting your time, you're completely misguided. You're not there completely. If you get the thought that you lost precious time massaging your parents' legs because you could have finished basically like memorizing a page of the Quran or this or that, then you're just completely lost. You're completely misguided, because ultimately it is not the pleasure of Allah that you're after. Because this time that you had spent massaging your parents' legs may be in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala much greater than all of the efforts, all of your efforts, because all of these efforts may be for fame, maybe for recognition, maybe for achievement. Because, if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, human needs, there is, after self-esteem, there is self-actualization. Self-actualization. You actually want to learn, and not only to be recognized as learned, but you want to learn to be knowledgeable. This is called self-actualization. But that is still not self-transcendence. It is still not learning for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, you're really serious about learning, and it's not just about recognition. You want to learn to be learned, but that is called self-actualization. It is still short of transcendence, to want the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something bigger than your own desires and your own needs and so on and so forth. So consistency is important. So Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah did not only motivate people, he literally mobilized armies. He literally mobilized armies, and he did this, over and over again. But he also participated. And in the Battle of Shaqhab, which was in 702 after the Hijrah, so in the Battle of Shaqhab, he told the chamberlain of the Emir, or the leader, show me awqifni mawqif al-maut. Show me the position to face death. Show me where is it that I could stand to face death. So they were coming, the Mongols were coming down, completely enveloped by the dust, and only the glimmer of their swords was showing from behind the dust. They were coming down from some heights, or like a little mountain or something. And the chamberlain told them, this is where you want to stand when they're coming down if you want to face death. And so he said to him, they were descending like a flood, their weapons visible beneath the dust that enveloped them. Then I said to him, my master, this is the position to face death, and the enemy is advancing beneath this swirling dust. Do as you wish. He then looked up to the sky, gazed intently, and moved his lips in prayer for a long time before springing forward or charging forward to engage in combat on his horse. I believed that he was invoking a prayer against them, and that his prayer was answered at that very moment. Then the battle ensued, and we engaged in combat. I did not see him again until Allah granted us victory. So, we have 1 minute. So I'm just going to try to be brief. But he did not show this only in the battlefield, because harder or more daunting than showing courage in the battlefield in the midst of your fellow mujahids is to show courage when you are alone. So when he stood before Ghazan, the chief of the Tatari chief, and he scolded Ghazan for plundering the wealth of the Muslims and destroying the city and so on and so forth. The scholars that were with him, Ibn Sasra, which was the Chief Justice that was with him, rebuked him afterwards. He said, you almost got us all killed. And Ibn Sasra said that we had basically our garments over our heads because we were thinking at every moment, Ghazan will order his head cut off and we will be splashed by his blood. So that is the type of courage that you show, that now you're alone and now you are confronting like a tyrannical despot, and then you still show the same character. More challenging for some people than facing a foreign foe is the task of confronting your own people, and he never shied away from confronting the Muslims, talking to the Muslims about their own state. The idea of projecting all the blame on the external enemy, that is a major problem in our ummah. We're not very introspective, but he was always saying to them, he was always basically pointing out the deficiency within the Ummah. He was saying, for instance, when the Muslims were defeated the year prior to Shakhab, he said, the state of the Muslims after their defeat last year can be likened to a consequence of visible sins and clear transgression. This defeat stemmed from corrupted intentions, pride, arrogance, injustice, egregious acts, and a deviation from the rulings of the Quran and Sunnah. It also arose from neglecting the obligations set by Allah and committing aggression against many Muslims in the lands of Al Jazeera and the lands of the Romans. So to point out the problems within your community, to be able to confront your own group, which is the scholarly group. He never shied away from that. توفي وهو محبوس فريد وعند الشيخ بالسجن اغتباطه. So توفي وهو محبوس فريد, he basically passed away confined and alone, confined in prison and alone. وعند الشيخ بالسجن اغتباطه. And the sheikh used to have, used to have joy or used to be joyous in prison. He used to actually teach the prisoners. He would never, his response to the logicians, which was abridged by Imam Suyuti afterwards in Jahd al-Qariha, that was written when he was in confinement. He never wasted time, and he would teach the prisoners. And in fact, Ibn Abdul Hadi or Ibn Fadlullah, I think it's Ibn Abdul Hadi, said that the prisoners, when they finished their term, they would ask to be left with him in prison. They would not want to leave the prison. They would ask to stay with him to learn more. And whenever he ran out of paper and pens, he would use chalk and so on and so forth. So that is called consistency. Consistency. It is basically consistency, vertical and horizontal. It is consistency in every regard. But also more challenging than basically to do all of the above is to disappoint your own followers, because many times the followed becomes enslaved to the follower. And many times we position ourselves. You position yourself, and after you had positions, and maybe early on when you started to position yourself, you were sincere. But then you basically you create a group of followers or a niche. Certain things are expected of you, other things are not expected. Certain fatwa are expected of you, other fatwa are not expected. So you develop a niche of your own, and you become extremely afraid to let down, to disappoint your audience, your own audience. So if you're considered to be basically center left, center right, centrist, right, radical left, this, that, just like in politics, people do this. And then you have a particular audience and you fear from letting them down. Then I'll give you a statement of Ibn Taymiyyah where it looked like he was inconsistent. The very man that basically dedicated himself to resisting not just the military impact of the Tatari invasions, but the cultural impact of the Tatari invasions or the Mongol invasions, and every consequence of the Tatari invasions, and fought by himself in many battles with unparalleled courage. He said, وكثيرا ما يتولى الرجل بين المسلمين والتتار قاضيا بل وإماما وفي نفسه أمور من العدل يريد أن يعمل بها فلا يمكنه ذلك بل هناك أو هنالك ما يمنعه من ذلك ولا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. So when the Tatars were advancing, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah motivated the rulers and people to confront them. When they arrived, he fought them fearlessly in person. However, when they were in control in certain areas and times, he was able to appreciate and approve the rationale some scholars other than him, not him, some scholars other than him provided for working for the Tatars, working as administrators, as judges for the Tatars. That is basically off color for him. That is not, expected of him. That would be disappointing to some of his audience, but that did not matter to him, because consistency here is basically commitment to the truth, to God, to Al-Haq subhanahu wa ta'ala, the real, the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I believe that this consistency and the resilience that made him end up, after his 8 stints in prison, dying in prison in 728, I think that this is an indication that this courage was for Allah. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم.